Pingula and willingly. These are fake words, right? Even besides this, you are trying to derive some meaning out of it, and that is just because of context. Because the way the words were formed in a sentence, it does give a similar sound, or we can say a familiar sound, right? Through which you can derive some meaning. First, when you listen to that sentence, you try to interpret that Mr. X stimulated, that means he did something. What do we mean by stimulated? That we don't know, right? It was something unknown, some unknown word to us. But even after that, Mr. X did something what we call stimulated. He did it on what? On which? Then he stimulated Pingula. And then it comes willingly. That means how he did it. So this is just a fake example to explain what do we mean by context. So in this sentence, Mr. X, that was the only phrase, that was the only word which you are familiar with. And remaining all the three words, stimulated, Pingula and willingly, were unknown to you because they were fake words, as I said. Even after that, you try to interpret and you got some amount of meaning out of it. That is called context. So don't pay much attention or never pay more emphasis on vocabulary part, and instead of that, better you pay much attention to the context part and try to derive some meaning out of it on the basis of the context. Even while we are reading a book and when we are going through the content, and when we get some unknown words, difficult words, we always try to derive meaning of those difficult words on the basis of some other words for which we know the meaning, for which we are familiar with the meaning. So that is called context. So even in listening, without paying emphasis on a vocabulary, we can understand the meaning on the basis of the context in which the speaker is delivering his message. The second thing is not to pay too much attention to the accessories and clothing of the speaker. Yes. As a good listener, it does not make any difference that what kind of attires the speaker has got or what kind of accessories he or she is wearing. So as a listener, don't pay attention because it becomes, distraction. It becomes totally distraction, and it will take you away from your actual listening, because your actual job is to listen to the message, to listen to the speaker, what he is trying to deliver. Instead of that, if you are paying attention to his or her clothes, attires and accessories, then obviously it becomes a distraction in the process of communication between you and your speaker. And it definitely leads to semantic gap, what we call gap of understanding, gap of meaning, and finally, ultimately, it leads to the failure of the process of communication. So better you don't pay attention to these things and stay focused. Note to prepare your responses while the speaker is speaking. That's a very good point, and every listener should take care of this. Not to prepare your responses while the speaker is speaking. That means don't interrupt. Don't interrupt your speaker when he or she is speaking. Once your speaker is done with his message, once your speaker is done at least with a part of his or her message, only then and then you prepare your response, or we can say you react on it, right? Or you show your queries on the message. But never interrupt your speaker. Otherwise, it creates unnecessary hurdles in the process of communication between you and your speaker. Avoid preconceptions and prejudices. As we talked earlier, that your mind should not be biased. So always try to avoid preconceptions. Your mind should not be preoccupied. At the same time, there should not be something what we call preconceptions, right? Pre-assumptions, what we call, right? You should not assume the things for the message or even for the speaker. So never have certain preconceptions and certain pre-assumptions before you pay attention to the listening to the actual message of the speaker. And never keep prejudices in your mind. Prejudice, what we call in Gujarati, that is called purvagrah. So never have this kind of prejudice, and feel free, be relaxed, be open-minded to have the message, to listen to the message that your speaker is trying to deliver. There are few more don'ts for effective listening. Not to get distracted by outside influences. See, when you are listening to your speaker, when you are paying attention to that, there must be certain other outside influences. Maybe some other passers-by are there. Some people are working in nearby place. Maybe some surrounding noises are there, or maybe certain other distractions are there. But always stay focused and try to fight against all these distractions. Not to interrupt too often. See, as I said earlier, that once your speaker is done with his or her message, only then and then you should show your response. And at least when a part of the message is done and you are showing your response, again in that way, you should not interrupt your speaker, or you should not make your queries again and again very often. If you have too much of questions, too many questions, too much queries, then better you wait, and once the speaker is completely done with his or her message, with his or her delivery, only then and then put up your queries. So that's a sign of a good listener. That should be the ideal practice as a good listener. Not to show boredom. Again, as I say, that you have to motivate, you have to encourage your speaker, and how you can do that? At least by not showing, not reflecting as you are getting bored. So don't show your boredom to your speaker, and through this you can encourage him or her. So the conclusion is, you do not listen with just your ears. You listen with your eyes and with your sense of touch. You listen with your mind, your heart, your imagination. It is said by Egan Girard. So when I say that you do not listen with just your ears, as we say that we listen through our ears, that is fine. But you listen with your eyes and with your sense of touch. So see, there are more senses which are involved in your listening. While you are listening, you are paying your attention, your eyes are focused on your speaker, right? And all your other senses are also focused on the message that you are receiving, you are trying to receive, right? So it is not like that you are just listening to the message being delivered by the speaker through your ears only. But all your existence, should be involved in the process of listening. A good conversationalist is popular, a good listener even more so. Talk only if you have something to say. See, a conversationalist is popular, but a good listener is even more popular. That is say, that means the person who always keeps talking, always keeps saying certain things. Instead of that, the person who always keeps listening, that is a better option. So, friends, always, if you wish to be heard, you should be ready to listen to other people, what they have to say. And you have to talk only if you have something to say. So, thank you, friends. And today, in the session of listening, in this scope program, we discussed about what is listening and hearing, the difference between listening and hearing. We discussed about types of listening, in which we discussed 4 types: appreciative listening, empathetic listening, comprehensive listening, critical listening. I repeat, appreciative, where you are trying to derive some aesthetic pleasure out of it. You are listening to some musician or something like that. Empathetic, where you are showing your concern, your empathy, your emotions are involved. Comprehensive, maybe a classroom situation or so, where you are paying attention and trying to analyze and interpret the message, that becomes comprehensive listening. Critical, when you have to pass certain comments and your judgments your critical involvement, your critical listening is involved. You have to focus on what is going right and what is wrong, and that is called critical listening. Then we discussed about active and passive listening. Then we discussed about certain tips, certain implications, and certain tips. We discussed about some do's and don'ts on effective listening, and we also discussed about traits of a good listener. So I hope it was a session which can help you a lot to become a good listener, and wish you a very happy listening. Thank you.